I'm going to be your conductor on this morning's trip. For the next 40 minutes or so, sit back, relax, make a new friend if you can, and enjoy the story and history of the Madeira Sugar Pine Company, as well as some of the natural history of our area. Now, you probably saw this coming before we leave the station today. There are a few safety rules we need to go over. Please pay attention, they are important. Thankfully, there's only 3 of them. Rule number 1, please remain seated at all times. You're riding in old freight cars that originally hauled logs. They're simply not going to give you any warning when they kick your feet out from under you. You land on somebody, and that's embarrassing. So remain seated. Rule number 2, keep your arms and legs, head, shoulders, knees, and toes inside the train at all times. Some of the trees get closer than you may think. And rule number 3, because the train's made of wood, because it's federal forest land, and for everyone's health and convenience, absolutely no smoking. So again, that's remain seated, arms and legs inside, no smoking. Please do not light my train on fire. With that, we will be ready to begin in just a few minutes. There's a few last groups coming our way, giving them a moment to join us, and then we will enjoy our train ride. At this moment, though, I'm going to go down by the locomotive, work my way back. As I get to your car, would you please hold up your wristbands for me? Thank you.
Tickets. They're gonna Indiana Jones us out of the train. No ticket.
I got no stinking tickets.
No, he throws the guy out of the Zeppelin. No ticket. And then everyone throws a ticket. It's weird that they didn't check it before we got on the train.
Excellent. Well, folks, I got good news and I got bad news. Good news, I don't have to kick anybody off the trestle. Bad news, we don't have a trestle. It will be just a moment or 2 more, about 2 more minutes, and then we will be on our way.
What if you just duck down?
Now, check in. Jennifer McConnell, are you here? Wave at me.
Uh-oh.
Steve Saleson. Okay, they're still on their way.
That would be going by now. Nope.
Okay. I think we might be able to relook if we need to.
They're late. Let's leave them. Hope it's not too rumbly. I didn't bring any stabilization.
All right, we are ready to begin. Please make sure you're seated. We're going to enjoy ourselves a train ride.
Is there anyone in the caboose?
Someone is pulling in, okay.
Aww. Well, leave them. Did they take your name when you bought tickets?
Yeah, we could have bought them online, but we didn't know if we were gonna make it for the level. Look, they just get a park right up front.
I get stuck sometimes myself. Which group are you? Sales. Diana has you. station. Train is ready to depart.
Copy, train. You are okay to proceed. Station to Plantation.
Okay to proceed. Station to Plantation. 402, high ball. See you around.
Well, again, welcome aboard, everybody. There is a lot of history to discover out here. I'm going to start with that spur track coming up ahead on the left side. Now, you might see that tank car's a little toasty. Everything you see there, including the two Ford Model A 1928 rail speeders by the switch itself, the two steam locomotives we operated here that called in sick today, these freight cars you're riding in, everything but the black diesel hauling us right now came from the West Side Lumber Company of Tuolumne, California. They are about 100 miles to the north of us, and they are the very last of the American logging railroads to operate steam locomotives. They did so until the winter of 1961. Here at home, the Madera Sugar Pine Company was one of the largest, most profitable logging businesses up here. They operated from 1898 till 1931 when they voluntarily closed down their operations. Sadly, when they did so, the very next thing that they did was scrap everything. 5 wood-burning steam locomotives, 4 of which were shays, just like we have. The rolling stock, even the track itself got scrapped. So I had to purchase this equipment from the west side, bring it on down here, and relay some track on a roadbed that was used by Madera Sugar Pine from 1908 to 1924. Now again on the left side of the train, we have got ourselves a power pole. Crickets. Crickets. Power poles are none too exciting, but the view you get here certainly is, courtesy of a wildfire in 2017. This nearest ridgeline, that's Speckerman Mountain. Mill site's down in the canyon below us, about a mile downstream. The granite peak you see brilliantly capped in snow and a few clouds up there, that's Raymond Mountain. Raymond Mountain has an elevation of 8,500 feet. At one time, the company was logging about halfway up Raymond Mountain. They brought all that timber down to the canyon below us using the tracks you are currently riding on. Yes, this was the easiest way to get from there to there. Logging first began up here in 1874 with the California Lumber Company on this property. They were on the east side of it. They were followed by Madera Flume and Trading. Only made it 2 years and then got destroyed by a recession. It all went into foreclosure. Foreclosure was bought up by the Madera Sugar Pine Company, by far the largest and most profitable of the three. For a total of 60 years between all three companies, trees were cut down up here without a single tree ever being replanted. By the time they hung up their spurs in 31, they had clear-cut just around 30,000 acres of trees. Forest you see before you today is merely the result of natural reseeding from the seeds in the soil and the very, very few trees the loggers just could not be bothered to cut down. Makes for a very young forest. It's only about 100 years of age. It's got 150 years to go. It's only half grown. Check out even the largest trees out there in that forest. Look at them. They'll be almost, not quite, twice as high, and more than twice as fat by the time they are done growing. I also mentioned it's fire country. In 2017, what was called the railroad fire started directly above you on the top of the hill. Somebody dropped a tree on a live power line, and things got mighty ugly mighty fast. You can tell by our burned up tank car back there, we came within about 80 yards of losing our station building and engine house. Thanks to dedication of the firefighters turning our railroad into their command post, all we lost was a narrow gauge snowplow. We are mighty grateful for their efforts. The blind curve we are entering right now is called Horseshoe Curve. In 1908, the Chinese labor force was hired by the company to dig out this particular section. They did so using just pickaxes, shovels, and wheelbarrows. This is going to give you an idea of just how much work these gentlemen had to put into the project. You see all this dirt mounded up on the inside of the curve. It's got trees and bushes growing out of it. Well, that dirt ain't there naturally. That's the dirt they moved by hand to make room for this railroad. When you get back to our gift shop behind the second register, there's a historic photograph of this very location. As we come around the corner here, no doubt you are going to notice it's a bit of a mess. 3 winters ago, that's after the fire, Mother Nature had another temper tantrum, a mono wind event. We always get them up here. This one was a doozy. Winds came up slope at 50 miles an hour. Gusts hit 60 to 80 miles an hour. And the very worst of them all, I am not making this number up, hit 140 miles an hour. You can see that by the tree split right down the middle. These trees did not stand a chance. Neither did our railroad when trees landed on it. Some of the rails in here snapped like twigs. Kept our track crew mighty busy the rest of that winter and into the spring repairing the damage. That was that winter. This winter, the temper tantrum, we have a washout. The last quarter mile of our line is inaccessible. That may be why you've noticed the signs and the statements around, and we've reduced our price a little bit. Our track crew is out there right now, slogging through the mud fest trying to repair it. More on that a little bit later. There are many trees in the forest. Let's start with the white fir. You're passing it right now on the right side. Straight and even layered branches, short little 1-inch needle. It's related to red fir at higher elevations. You should recognize them as Christmas trees. On both sides, reddish brown corrugated bark, a flat segmented leaf. It's not a needle. Kind of looks like a redwood, doesn't it? It is not. That is the incense cedar. Just down the hill, we got a healthy specimen of California black oak over there. The black oaks haven't quite woken up yet. Towards the front of the train, you'll be passing a beautiful specimen of dogwood, an understory small tree. The little flowers just appearing, those are going to get about the size of tea saucers by the time they're fully grown. They're a stunning plant. We got all kinds of trees up here, and it was the pine trees that the logging companies had really come for. Those were by far the largest and made them the most money. In this forest you are going to find 2, ponderosa pine and the namesake sugar pine. There are a couple ways to tell these 2 apart. First is by the length of the needles. Ponderosa pine grows big, long, 8 to 10 inch needles. Sugar pine, shorter 2 to 3 inch needles. Ponderosa pine grows those needles in clusters of 3, sugar pine clusters of 5. But by far it's the pine cone, the most interesting way to tell these 2 apart. Sugar pine has claim to fame as growing the longest pine cone in the world. And trust me, you do not want to catch them when they come out of the tree. They will give you a headache. They grow anywhere from 10 to 26 inches in length. While they're still green and full of sap, they can weigh up to 4 pounds. We have some healthy specimens on display back at our station building. Now, the track you're riding on right now, it's narrow gauge. It's exactly 36 inches apart at the railhead. Standard gauge is 56.5 inches. Madera Sugar Pine Company had 140 miles of narrow gauge track on the books. Don't let the number fool you. They only operated 10 to 25 miles at any given time. Again, that mill site's about a mile below us downstream. They had logging camps scattered all throughout these mountains, and the rail network fanned away kind of like spokes on a wheel. When they ran out of trees at one camp, which took about a year or two to do so, the camp was built on skids to begin with. They packed it up on the train, hauled it away. Then they came back with the train, and they ripped up the tracks behind them. Rails, ties, plates, anything they could get their hands on, reused somewhere else. They were cheapskates like that. The abandoned railroads left behind became U.S. Forest Service access roads in time, including Mill Canyon Road. That's the road you're approaching on the right-hand side. It's the very last railroad line used by Madera Sugar Pine Company. It was in service from 1928 through 1931 and took them all the way to Chowchilla Mountain. You may have noticed our little railroad is windy and steep. That's the name of the game when you're in mountain logging, and that's where the Shea steam locomotive enters the story, makes herself the star. It's a genius design. Unlike other locomotives, it is geared. It has swiveling trucks. It's essentially a very large tractor, and it would haul very slowly 20, sometimes 30 fully loaded flat cars of timber through the woods. Madera Sugar Pine Company had 4 wood burners on their roster, plus a little tiny 040 they named Betsy. Sadly, again, all of them were scrapped. R2 from the West Side Rubber Company, including 10, the largest, heaviest narrow gauge Shea ever to leave the factory. They burn oil, not wood. Other than that, they're the exact same design as what MSP operate around here. But like I said, they called out sick today. What's really going on? Number 10 was taken out of service last year for her boiler overhaul. That has to be done every so often. All new fire tubes, all new superheater tubes, ultrasound, the whole 9 yards. It's an FRA Form 4. And she has passed all her inspections, tests, the state has certified her, insurance has certified her. We're painting her. That's what's happening in the yard right now. She should be rejoining us about the same time that our washout is repaired, and we will get to more normal operations around here. Her sister, number 15, by far the older of the two. I learned to fire on her last year. We put a lot of miles, use and abuse on her last year. Her line shaft is currently disassembled in about 5,000 different parts as we repair things, get things back in adjustment. So we have the 402 diesel, a Canadian. It's a GE 44-ton center cap switcher, built for Algoma Steelworks, St. Saint Marie, Ontario. It was the number 1 on their roster, and they added an additional 6 tons of weight for better adhesion. Hauled around coal, coke, and ore at their steelwork factory. Worked for a bunch of different railroads in North America, most recently Durango Silverton Narrow Gauge. We bought her in 2006 as our track work engine. She will be hauling a lot of ballast in a few more months. And on days such as today, she's our standby locomotive. We are very happy to have her. Come through the crossing here, this low-growing shrub, the ground cover on both sides, that's called bear clover. And about next week it should start producing a small white flower. Seems harmless enough, right? Don't trust it. Oh, the loggers back then in our track crew today, they have a different name for it. They call it mountain misery. That's because of the horrible stench that comes off that plant. It sticks to your clothes when you walk through it. It's got a very sticky resin to it, and even with modern detergents, it's going to take 2 or 3 washes to get it on back out. The loggers, I do believe they just got stuck with it. Now, the Miwok people lived up here for thousands of years before we did, and they had a use for that plant. They'd take it, and they'd brew a tea from it. When you drank this tea, it would help with your headache. It would help your aches and pains. It really would reduce your fever, and they were on to something. We now know this plant contains a lot of acetylsalicylic acid. That's the active ingredient in aspirin. On the right side, smooth maroon bark and a little olive leaf. It's blooming right now. This is manzanita. We used to have a lot more of these last year. They got taken away. Some of you may already know manzanita es español, or little apples. It produces a little berry. That berry is a food source for mule deer and black bear. I'm told it's pretty sour. The Miwok Indians would take that berry and make a cider drink from it. Now, the Madera Sugar Pine Company had a workforce of between 600 and 800 guys at any given time for their operations, split about 50-50 between the mill site and those logging camps that moved around. It was seasonal work up here, like it is for us today. There's just too much snow in the winter to bother doing anything. These guys would use double-headed axes, crosscut saws they like to call misery whips. I do notice the word misery comes up a whole lot in logging. They would cut down and load about 80 flat cars of timber each and every day. That's 80 of what you are currently riding in. Over the course of a given year, that's about 50 million board feet. Over the lifetime of the operation, till they hung up their spurs in 31, 1.5 billion board feet of timber, yes, billion with a B, had been cut down. That is enough to go around the equator more than 11 times. Yes, we did get bored one day, and do the math on that one. Work days around here were both hard and long. Average labor could expect to work 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. And for his troubles, he'd be paid about 10 cents an hour plus room and board. Skilled laborers, of which there were many. Saw sharpeners, steam donkey operators, carpenters, blacksmiths, locomotive engineers. They were paid around 30 cents an hour. Lumberjacks were paid by the tree. The more trees they cut down and the better they made their cuts, the more money they would make. Once a tree had been felled, the team immediately set upon it and turned it into logs. Then things got even more dangerous. They used all manners of crazy contrivances to haul those logs, sometimes miles, to the waiting rail spurs to be loaded up on a train. They would use portable steam engines, that's called steam donkey. One of them is outside of our museum. And up to 2 miles of steel cable through the woods. The operator, all he's got for eyes is a guy with 2 miles of rope attached to the whistle. Men lost their arms, men lost their legs, men lost their lives if they did not heed the safety precautions, and it did happen. In later years, they would strip trees, large trees of every branch on it, stick pulleys way up in the top, turn it into a gigantic yard arm. You would see logs flying hundreds of feet in the air between the ends of a canyon. They got crazy hauling these logs to the waiting trains. They got loaded up on the flat cars then, chained down. About once a day, a train crew would show up with a load of empties, set it aside, pick up the loaded ones, do a brake test, and then as fast as they could go down this line to the mill site. Mind you, speed of Shea is only about 17 to 20 miles an hour. I am a fireman up in the camp myself. I'll tell you, it gets sketchy past 12 miles an hour. You may have noticed we are coming to a stop. That washout I mentioned is around the very next curve, and we just don't feel like going 88 miles an hour to turn this train into a plane today. We are going to stop here, and you're going to see Cole over there. He's one of our firemen, my counterpart. He's going to come along the train back to this caboose and be our eyes and ears for a railroad maneuver called a shove back. We're going to go backwards to the station. Please remain seated. The saying it is, for the engineer up there in the cab, he can't see through you too well to begin with, and he certainly can't see through this green box I'm standing on. That's where Cole is going to be our eyes and ears. And on the way back up the hill, I'll tell you more about Madera Sugar Pine.
All seated.
402, you're clear to shove.
Now, washouts are a fact of life up here. It's something the Madera Sugar Pine Company had to deal with every winter and every spring. There is a crucial difference, though. Madera Sugar Pine Company did not consider themselves a railroad. These trains to them were nothing more than glorified tractors. They didn't care if they put one on the ground. They did it a couple times a week anyways. They would have just slapped some dirt in under that washout, laid some tracks again, and got back on with business. We are a little more picky than they are, and we certainly like staying on top of our rails. So we're having the contractor come in with the heaviest of the work and the compaction. We're compacting the soil the right way. Our track crew is down there right now helping through that mudfest. And then we will relay some tracks. We hope to have that in business in time for our Moonlight Special dinner trains to resume in a few more weeks. That's the hope. I am not going to make the promise, though. Again, it's a mudfest out there. Just bear with us. We are doing the best we can. Also, as we go up the hill, at certain points, it becomes silly for me to try to talk over Detroit motors back there. So I do at all times to enjoy the clickety-clack of the rails, the gentle swaying motion, the smell of pine, fir, the creosote of the ties. These are experiences that were common to these mountains, but aside from our little railroad still in operation, it is gone now. All the other logging railroads have passed. Also, as you look out the side of the train, look for rail spikes in trees, a barrel hoop at one point, bits of tin on the ground, axe blades, all sorts of Easter eggs were left behind by these loggers. How they got bored on 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, I don't know, but they definitely did. Now, when those train crews got down to the mill site, again, about a mile below us down the canyon, tracks haven't gone there in years, they would knock the logs off the side of the train, just kick them over most unceremoniously down the hill and into the log pond with a big old splash. From there, logs went into the mill, got stripped of bark, and were given a rough cut. The companies experimented with many forms of shipment down to Madera, California. In the early days, California Lumber Company shipped by ox cart. That is a 3-day ride by ox. That's a whole lot of labor, a lot of money. That's a whole lot of animals. Their profit margins were very thin, so the California Lumber Company built the world's largest log flume. No one had ever built one that big before. 54 miles of it. It stretched from here on down to Madera, California. It was the world's largest wooden structure for a number of years, and it took them 2 years to build the thing. It cut down transit time to only 12 hours and was a massive labor savings. They could undercut their competitors by sometimes as much as 50%. Now, when Madera Flume and Trading went out, the whole thing went into disrepair. When Madera Sugar Pine Company bought it up, it was, again, took about another 2 years to bring it back into operation. But once in operation, it was the same boom for business. And for labor, all they had to have were flume herders. These guys lived and worked out of shacks every 2 or 3 miles along that flume, which was just a V-shaped wooden trough. Water ran through on gravity alone. These guys kept track of the timber going by. Sometimes they would stop it and join it together with rope and ever longer trains. They learned all sorts of tricks over the years. If they encountered a problem, such as a log jam, your logs disappear, or a flume break, your water disappears, they did have a rudimentary telephone to call the mill, tell them to stop shipment until they could go fix the problem. Usually they were on the own to do so. Now, I want you to look at your feet, those boards you're standing on right now. About 2 or 3 of them together, that's it, that's the walkway. There's no handhold. There's no guardrail. Sometimes you're 40 to 50 feet straight up in the air over a small canyon fixing problems. Amazingly, in all the years of operation, there was exactly 1 fatality. The sheriff did rule it foul play. It was a murder. These guys were fantastic at keeping themselves alive in the face of overwhelming danger. Now, once that timber had transversed the flume, it got down to Madera, California, where the finishing mill was. It was again given a cut, basically take off the banged up edges, and then they had massive drying yards, acres and acres and acres of them, to dry them out in the sun. Once dried, they are shipped on the Southern Pacific Railroad to San Francisco. From San Francisco, all points, east and west. The market was international. The market, cheap furniture. Not much fine furniture, though they used a little bit of the black oak. Cheap furniture, cabinets, and fence boards. More fence boards than any other product they ever sold. Water from the flumes was sold to farmers. There was a growing population of them. The valley was originally scrublands and swamplands. They were working on removing all of that natural beauty and turning it into a breadbasket such as the world had never seen. These were times of change for California. Much was being destroyed. The native populations were being obliterated. And the modern world was beginning to take over. California would never be the same. As we come through the crossing, I'm going to tell you about what you're going to see just further on down the track as we go through the curve again. When you get there, look up the hill into the thickest section of the forest above us. Up those two little gullies you'll soon be seeing. What you are seeing there is the parking lot, the station building. You are directly below where you left, but you are over 200 feet lower in elevation. That's how steep this railroad really is. We have we average 4%. We have 7% that we are just about to attack, so the locomotive is going to get louder. We've got 9%. We've got 12%. That's our ruling gradient. It ties us with exactly two other railroads in North America for steepest adhesion railway. That's our sister railroad, Roaring Camp, out in Santa Cruz, that also operates West Side Lumber Company equipment, and Cass Scenic in West Virginia. Yes, all three railroads rely heavily on the Shea steam locomotive. They are the best at what they do, and even a century later, they have never been bested at it.
Just covers you with snow. Shea engine that runs that way, Cass, is from Oregon.
Some of you may be wondering what's up with the piles of logs and bushes everywhere. No, we don't have rodents of unusual sizes. I don't even believe there's such a thing. What we do have are contractors working for the U.S. Forest Service. We're moving to a little bit of an ecology lesson here. Step away from the history for a moment. You may have noticed California has been gloriously ablaze for years now. Keeps getting in the news. It's been really bad around here. It's supposed to happen all the time, but in a much smaller way. It's fire ecology up here. These mountains are meant to burn every 3 to 4 years. This burns off the duff layer. It burns off some of the ladder fuel so the fires don't go up in the crown. When that happens, bad things happen very, very fast. The thing of it is, a couple bad things happen. First, Madera Sugar Pine Company clear-cut the land. That's why that looks like a jungle down there below you. That's what happens when every seed in the forest sprouts all at once. And then, When the Dare Sugar Pine Company handed it over to the brand new U.S. Forest Service, they didn't give them the memo. Maybe they never had it to begin with. The memo is this: the Miwok people, again, thousands of years here, they knew what was going on. If lightning did not set off a fire, they'd start it themselves. Had all the aforementioned benefits, thinned out the forest a little bit, made it healthier. It drastically reduced the tick population, and it made deer hunting much easier. Forest Service hadn't heard about this part, or if they did, they ignored it. They practiced a policy for decades of suppressing every last fire up here and thinning nothing. That's why we nearly lost the railroad when we did. Thankfully, policies are changing and a better way is coming through. So, step one, before we can even control burn, because we'd still lose the forest right now, selectively thinning. Some trees will grow to their full maturity. Others become part of the new duff layer. Some of those piles are going to get chipped up. Others are going to get burned. The wood chips I tend to use in the garden around the station building. I love helping out in the garden. Once this is done, the next stage will be going to a regime of control burns every few years, and at that point the forest will get back to a much healthier and natural state. Also, as we come into Horseshoe Curve again, start looking over the sides of the train. Again, remind you to keep inside the train. You're looking for a little plant that's just now beginning to pop through the duff layer with a palm-shaped leaf on it. That's one of 20 species of lupins that grow right around this railroad. Hundreds of species of lupins cover the American West. They're a personal favorite of mine. One is even the state flower of Texas, but of course these are not Texas bluebonnets here. These particular lupins that grow in this corner seem to be an annual. Every July or so they'll wither away and die, and the new generation, they're popping out right now. They grow to a little bush about 2 to 3 feet wide. Sweet perfume comes off of them, and spikes, a couple feet tall, of brilliant blue flowers. Deep blue, these ones, with a little white fringe and a small yellow insect. They're a member of the bean family, so they are fixing nitrogen and sticking it back in the soil. Lupins enjoy, or in fact love, exactly 3 different things: sunlight, disturbed soil, and water. They have all 3 right here. We had that forest fire come through here, open up the canopy. Then we had the windstorm, open up the canopy even more, and throw a bunch of trees around, tossing up the soil. Forest Service has come through for their work. That's tossed up the soil even more. This puts most plants at a disadvantage and lupins at an advantage. And then finally, this is a year-round spring right here. All the surrounding slopes drain into this bowl-shaped depression that is Horseshoe Curve, making it year-round water. Lupins absolutely thrive here. They take over every year, and they will continue to do so for about another 10 years is my guess. At a certain point, the forest is going to recover, the canopy thick enough that not enough sunlight reaches the floor for the lupins to thrive, but they'll have done their job of sticking a lot of nitrogen back in the soil and waking up the soil biome. At that point, some other woodland plants that enjoy the shade a little more will take over for them. Also, in this area, you might start seeing a little tiny plant with 3 leaves on it, and it kind of looks like a strawberry. That's because it is. It's wild strawberry. One of 3 strawberries native to North America that got hybridized together to make the more familiar, tasty garden strawberry. These plants are entirely edible when they are in fruit, but the fruit is tiny, about the size of your pinky nail. And no, I will not share with you where my personal favorite berry patch on property is. That one's mine. You can't have it. And as we exit Horseshoe Curve, you can look look over your shoulder there, marvel at the railroad below you where you just were. This is just how steep a railroad Madera Sugar Pine Company built up the side of the mountain. It's a little marvel of engineering in its own right. They didn't have ready-made topographical maps. They had no satellite imagery, anything else to help them. They had their wits and their experience as surveyors and track layers, nothing more. And yet they built this up the side of the canyon, down along it. Highway 41 still is part of the old right-of-way there beyond our station building. About where Tenaya Lodge currently is, that's where it would have curved over to the right again. Big sandy road there is the old railroad grade, and that headed up into the Fresno Dome country. Where our station building and engine house is would not have been any such thing back in the day, though the siding was there. It was much longer too. It was a division point. They did not have any dispatchers. They had no way to not run headlong into each other, other than one set of crew stays in one place, the other. Never the twain shall meet. Makes a gigantic relay race, and that baton was passed daily right where our station building is. A loaded train would be tied down from come down the mountain and the empties picked up. The mill crew would come up, set off the empties, and pick up the full, such as it went. As we come to the end of our run here today, so too did the Madera Sugar Pine Company come to an end of their run. That happened in November of 1931. It was the early years of the Great Depression, though they did not have a name for it just yet. All they knew it was bad, and it didn't seem to be going away. Madera Sugar Pine Company had just run out of trees. Again, 30,000 acres clear cut. To log more, they're going to have to buy land or lease land. Problem. They're sitting on 2 years worth of unsold timber down in Madera. They saw the writing on the wall. They decided to get while the getting was good, while they still had money. They were not bankrupt. So, board of directors decides to voluntarily close down operations, and the last load of rough cut left the mill site down in Sugar Pine at the end of November 31. When it did so, the foreman tied down the mill whistle for a full 10 minutes to signal an end of the company's run. It wasn't bad news for everybody involved. The original investors in the Madera Sugar Pine Company had realized 45 times over their original investments and made them fantastically wealthy. Everyone else just got a pink slip. When the foreman untied the whistle, the show was over, and with it, a way of life. The very next thing they did was scrap everything. The number 2 locomotive, Arthur Hill, the oldest of the Shays, stayed on at the old mill site for a couple years for a civilian conservation corps camp. That closed in 45, and then shortly after, it too burnt to the ground, and Arthur Hill went to the scrap heap. Nothing happened for a number of years until the Stauffer family moved in, a family of Swiss immigrants from Tocino, some German-speaking, some Italian-speaking. They built some cabins up here, it reminded them so much of home. They built the Swiss Melody Inn. That later got sold off. It's now the Narrow Gauge Inn directly next door to us. That is now a separate company. And then, in the early 60s, Rudy Stauffer realizes his hotel is sitting on top of an abandoned railroad line. That must have been an interesting dinner conversation. Honey, can I buy a steam locomotive? What? At that, we restored 2 miles of their old line. By the early 70s, it was complete. And we have been here ever since, through thick and thin. Wildfires, recessions, blizzards, washouts, you name it, we're here. On behalf of the Yosemite Mountain Sugar Pine Railroad, I would like to thank each and every one of you for choosing to join us on this lovely crisp day. As we come to the station, please remain seated till we come to that full and complete stop. You'll honk just once. That means you ain't moving again. There's more history for you to discover in the Thornberry Museum. try your luck at prospecting at Gold Rush City, there's a kids depot for the young and young at heart. Directly next to it is a preserved section of the original flume itself. And our woodworking guy, Eddie, has done a fantastic job of building what it would have been like brand new. Browse our gift shop for a groovy memento of your time here, and our food window is open. Myself, I am a fan of the chili dogs around here. Fill out those review forms, let us know how we did or how we can improve. Give us a shout out, Google, Yelp, TripAdvisor. My name's Sean, I've been your conductor here today, and the other two men on this train, Cole Lawrence being our eyes and ears, and Aaron Peck back there driving you around. Thank you again, everybody. Grab your things, watch your step. Have a fantastic day out here in the Sierra National Forest. Thank you again.
Brr.